Hi everyone, happy Wednesday. So we are having a watercolor Wednesday and I am going to finish this long-standing whip I have in Country Charm as a Creative Haven book by Teresa Goodridge. And here at the beginning it'll take a while for me to actually open the darn book. So I had, I can't remember, November, December, beginning of the year, started this page. I wanted to do a page, and it's the one that's on the cover. I wanted to do a page entirely in watercolors, so I first treated it with satin glazing liquid, and then pulled out this set of watercolors. This is recommended on the Frugal Crafters channel for some of the best, in her opinion, budget-friendly watercolors. They're actually on the tin it says Mei Liang, but she refers to them as the pretty excellent watercolors, so that's what I'm going to call them. And here I'm showing I've combined the, if you have them and you're familiar with the colors in them, I've combined an emerald green and the yellow green to kind of get more of a grass green. So as you can see, I already had the top part of the picture done last year, and then, like I said, just pretty much ignored it forever and a day. So I wanted this grass here in the foreground to be more of a grass green, which I guess is a color name that makes absolute sense. So the way I'm using watercolors in this picture is it's just entirely watercolors. I get a little bit right there on the tablecloth, and I'm gonna just get some clean water and lift that up. So no pencils on this. I am doing pretty much, I don't know if I'm sure there is a generally accepted watercolor technique for coloring and coloring books. I've kind of had to find my own way this year with them. With some of the ones I did in the 50 Jungle Miniatures books, you guys kind of saw me figuring out how I want to use watercolors. And so basically there's two ways. One of them I use as a really light base, like I'm putting down now, of the grass green, just a very watered down base. And this is why I have satin glazing liquid on this paper, because even though this is a medium, this is a little better paper than Amazon, it's still not going to keep the it's still going to buckle with a lot of water use. So because I really want that diluted base layer, I just prefer using the satin glazing liquid at this point. Now, I call this a demo, not a tutorial, if you're familiar with these types of videos, because basically I'm learning how to do this as I'm recording this and showing you guys, so I don't really consider it a tutorial. I'll put how I color if it's, I guess, more of a tutorial, or how, I do that stuff. But if I'm just trying things out like I am here, this is, I think, the first picture I will fully watercolor that wasn't in the 50 Jungle Miniatures series this year. So this is a learning process, and I did really well on the top part of the page and then stopped it for months. So now I'm kind of relearning as I usually end up doing, what strategy I was taking when I started this page. So with pencils over the top, usually I'll add a base layer of watercolor on those types of pictures. It helps that I don't have to put as heavy pressure on the pencils. There's not, white space underneath, and if I wasn't so heavy pressured on my coloring, that would actually be like the highlight spots when I would, blend and shade in the pictures, but haven't quite gotten myself comfortable with doing that yet. I still use really heavy pressure. So you can see here I am actually pulling some color off the page because in those little spots in between the flowers, I realized it was just getting too dark. I also realized, and one of the reasons I use the satin glazing liquid, the paper doesn't buckle as much, and that is helpful in using watercolor, because if your page is buckling a lot, the water's pooling in those like divots down, and when it dries it can kind of leave a little bit of a splotchy look because of the way it's drying. So the satin glazing liquid protects the paper, prevents it from doing that, as being as wavy, and thus you get a smoother look to your watercolor as it dries. Though I'm still having that issue in the top right, as you can kind of see there. I go over it a few times to managed. Oh my goodness, what is going on with my voice? Hang on just a minute. I just ate lunch, so that might have something to do with it. It's weird. I don't normally have that happen after I eat. That's a little odd. Anyway, so, yeah. So instead of using colored pencil on this page, though, I am going with the light base, and then I'm just going to build color over it. I try a few things you'll see here in a little bit. I will outline the section in the darker color, and then use water to dilute it out so that it shades that way. Some places I just use the tiny little detail brush and just put in a little darker shading of the color, like on the roses and the apples and stuff, so you'll see that. I tried a few different methods. It just, again, this is a demo. I know it is using water in coloring books is really intimidating if you're not used to it, and I really apologize for my voice. I don't know what the heck is going on. If you're not used to it, it can be really intimidating. I sound like I'm going through puberty. That break in my voice, that's too funny. It has done that a lot the last few days. We've had a lot of rain and muggy weather, so it might just be causing problems with my allergies. But so yeah, with this initial layer, basically I am pulling a little bit of color off onto the tin, and then just really diluting it down with some water. It took me a lot of, see, here I am going back over this because that little splotch, you can tell where the paper dips a little right there. So and some things I don't know if maybe in just a couple little spots the satin glazing liquid, maybe I'm just not mixing it up well, and this might be the problem. But I noticed when I was putting color on this picture, there are a couple little spots down in the left where I had a heck of a time getting the color to actually stick to the paper. Like, it not only was protecting the paper from absorbing the watercolor, like it just didn't even want you to put the color on there. Like, it's just going to stay white. And so it might just be I need to mix it up really well and shake it up next time I use it. That's probably likely what's happened. But occasionally I will have that happen. But yeah, I am finding just now every time I use watercolor, I just much prefer treating the paper. It's so much easier, especially if you're, I still consider myself beginner level, even though I've been really using watercolor now in the books for the better part of a year. I still consider myself a beginner, and just still trying to get used to that watercolor look and putting it down on the paper. It makes it so much easier, in my opinion, to treat the paper because you have more drying time. If you just put it down on regular paper and you're not used to working quickly and used to the paper drying and stuff, it can be a very frustrating experience. At least it has been for me. I noticed a huge difference when I did the Neocolor demo a few months ago, where I treated the one side with the Neocolors and the satin glaze and liquid, and the other side I didn't. And like, the experience of diluting the neo colors on the paper was so much more pleasant on the treated side than it was on the other. I'm not saying it can't be done. I see plenty of people do it, and they have beautiful pages. It's just, for me personally, if I'm going to use watercolor or any medium in that matter, I want it to be an enjoyable experience. So for me, I want to set myself up for success. So like with colored pencils, I like doing the watercolor base because then I don't have to press down as hard on the pencils, which is allows me to use them more, and it doesn't cause in like a marker base. So I don't have to press down so hard on the pencils, use them as much, and it takes less pressure off my wrists. So, you know, it's all about finding ways that make coloring easier for you and more enjoyable. And so, like for me, treating the paper just time and time again seems to be giving me more of the results I want. So moving forward, unless somebody specifically requests it, more than likely all my watercolor demos will be on treated paper. So I don't mind doing an occasional one to just kind of challenge myself a bit, but just it's after doing this now, like I said, for the better part of a year, I'm just finding hands down treating the paper is so much more of a pleasant experience for me. So I'm probably coloring off the page right now, knowing me. Well, let's see. Let's see what I'm doing. Well, part of the problem here too is I was getting very indecisive. So I had the colors in mind until I got to the table, and then I really struggled because I knew the roses were going to be like a red or a rose type color, but I didn't really like, I knew the rose tablecloth I wanted to keep majority white, but past that point I didn't really know what else I was going to do. So I was trying to figure out what types of colors I wanted to go with, and ultimately it worked out. But I might speed it up a little here in a bit, because otherwise there's going to be a lot of pausing as you guys see my indecisiveness playing out on camera. So like I said, right now, what generally what I do and what I did at the top of the page is I will do a small area in the base color, wait, let it dry, then work on the next section. Because if you don't do that, you run into the problem I was having at the bottom of the page, where the section you just worked in will bleed into the other, and while you know you may want that in certain pictures, that was not what I wanted. So anyway, let me speed this up a little bit, and so I'm going to show you guys. Yeah, we've been going about 13 minutes here, so I will speed this up to music. The second part will be adding the details, the second layer, third layer of watercolor to the picture. So this will just show you guys me putting in the base for the rest of the picture. And so I will be back in a minute. All right, so now the initial layer has been put down and has dried. If you have any questions about which particular color I used for what, I will try to put it down in the description if I can remember. And uh, if, yeah, I guess that's the best I can do at this point. I didn't really use any mixed colors with the exception of this green grass. I need to get better at mixing colors and using them. My problem with mixed colors is I always tend to not mix enough. And so then I wind up trying to mix more and it never winds up looking exactly the same because I just don't pay attention to how I created it. And so that's one of the things I do need to get better at. So this is one way that I like to kind of shade, I guess I would say, with the watercolors. So that first layer had a lot of water. I pulled over. I even have a little ceramic palette I was using. I like the ceramic palette better than I do the metal one that the watercolors come in, by the way. It seemed a lot easier to pull color into the palette and dilute it. It seemed like it just wanted to beat up and cause more trouble on the metal palette for some reason. So that's one thing I would recommend is I really like the ceramic palette I picked up. I'll put a link to it in the description. I'd recommend getting one with rounded corners because I noticed when I went to try to clean it, I was having a lot of trouble with the square corners of my palette. So you might be better with like a little circle one or the one with a flower pattern. I might get one of those eventually myself. So that's something. Like I said, something new I learned in this picture is the ceramic palettes seem to work so much better than the metal ones when you're pulling color from the watercolor. So what I do on the second layer is I use very little water and I will put basically dip the brush into the wet paint itself. I don't pull it on the palette and dilute it down. I just pull it directly from, or I don't pull it over to the ceramic palette and dilute it down with more water. I just dab directly into paint that's already been dampened with the towel. I put, dip directly into that square. And I basically just draw a line. And I draw a line around the edges and then where the grass is showing some shading where it looks like the wind's blowing it or just little shaded areas of grass, I'm going in there and just not worrying too much about how choppy it looks because I'm going to be coming back in with some water and smoothing that down. So I like doing this when I just want some general shading for some big areas. Like the grass, I do this with the bench and the table down in the bottom of the page, which you can't see at the moment. Now I'm just coming in and adding some, of course, to the leaves. I am very slow when I watercolor. I think I'm trying to decide whether I I'm slower when I watercolor like this or I'm slower when I use colored pencil. To be fair though, I usually only put down like a base of watercolor layer, so it normally is not, it's normally quicker for me because instead of adding that pencil base, I'm doing the watercolor base. So I am thinking about this next weekend and what I want to do, unless I just want to do a regular color and chat on a page. I didn't mention it in the start of the video, but my mom's in the hospital right now. I found out Saturday. I had already recorded all my videos up until this one So if I sound a lot cheerier in those, that's probably why. But she's still in there. It's, well, we just don't know. We don't know because nobody has really told them anything. They couldn't find a bed. So, by the way, same problem they had New Year's Eve. So, those of you that think everything's fine and back to normal, it is not. Just go check out more than likely your local ER, and there is certainly there's some issues with healthcare going on right now, and I don't blame the nurses or the doctors for it. So, but they couldn't find her a room to begin with, even at the local hospital she was at, which I hate and I didn't want her to have to go to. But they pulled some strings because her cardiologist is at the one in Nashville, and actually were able to get her a bed in the one in Nashville. So she went there Saturday night, and she's been there ever since. They put her in a regular room finally yesterday, so I'm hoping that's a good sign. The problem is she's got a lot of back pain, and even my mother doesn't even take Tylenol or ibuprofen. Even like strong pain medication is not really helping with it. So it's hard to see that going on and know there's nothing I can do about it. So I'm kind of hoping today I'll hear from my dad and hear some answers. Maybe finally they'll get her doctor in to see her today, I think. So so this week might be a little haphazard, a little crazy. I'm going to try to go ahead and record as much as I can now, so I'll have videos to record during, or to run during the week. So what you're seeing me do now is basically I just grabbed some water with my watercolor brush and just went over those lines that I drew and just blended them out. So like I said, this works really good for, in my opinion, for like large areas where I don't want to really do a lot of detail. I just kind of want some vague shading. Vague shading. That's not what I mean, but the word has escaped me at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys this part, and then I'm going to show you what I do with like the roses and the leaves and stuff a little bit, just to show you that's the other way I add layers with the watercolor to, you know, get shading, and then I'll probably speed up the rest of it again. I mean, there's not really... Again, this is not a tutorial, but I mean, anything I can show you guys that I'm learning as I'm going along is kind of what I'm doing. So if it saves somebody some headache and some time in the future, then I consider, you know, what I can share to be to be worth it. So probably going to do the bottom of the picture, and it'd only be halfway in the camera. I still haven't quite got it licked yet. I'll talk about that when I show the finished picture, because there's a few areas, like there's some parts of this picture I love when it's done, and there's some parts of this picture that I'm like, I knew I could have done that better, but honestly I was kind of done with the picture. I will say the mix up of just using watercolor rather than using the real brush pens or something else, to me made this picture a little more, didn't make this picture feel as tedious, I guess, as some of my other pictures end up being, that take a lot of time, just because again, I find watercolor a lot of fun, and it really helps the time go by. And kind of today where I'm sitting there, I want to do something kind of creative, and I'm waiting to hear news about my mom and stuff. I mean, she's doing okay. Her blood pressure's a little low because when they went in, her heart rate was up a little bit, so they pumped her full of this medicine the doctor just took her off of because it makes her blood pressure too low, and so her blood pressure tanked, and it was high. It was like 135 or 40, and she has AFib and stuff, so it did need to be that high. But I mean, it wasn't like it was 180 or something like that. So I the local hospital I hate. I hate the last time my mom had to go in there. I don't feel like they just kept her a few days and released her and just really couldn't be bothered, I guess. I don't know. Either couldn't be bothered or didn't know what to do. And I feel like that was going to be the same situation here. So while I'm grateful she is at the hospital her doctor's at right now, like, I was not pleased with some of the stuff that was happening. But again, there's a lot going on in healthcare right now. Like I said, if you don't know any friends or family that are nurses or doctors or whatever, or if you have some, like, kind of talk to them about it. In some areas it's probably okay, but like I know in Canada in particular, they've had to shut down entire emergency departments because they just don't have the staff. And they've had to divert ambulances and stuff like that. So, and I mean, like I said, I remember New Year's Eve last year, my mom had to wait the better part of a day just for a bed. And so you would think 8 months later, everybody's acting like COVID's over. Sorry, it's not. And you're not going to convince me otherwise. So save your breath. But the thing that gets me is, everybody's acting like things are back to normal, and then my mom goes to the ER, and it's the exact same situation it was last year. She didn't have to wait quite as long, but like they had a bed, but they had no pillows. They were out of pillows in the ER. Like it was crazy. And they took my mother by helicopter, by life flight. I don't know if it's all called life flight or if it's just a helicopter ride, to Nashville instead of the ambulance. And I don't know if it's because they didn't have any ambulances available. I don't know if they acted like they didn't see anything on her tests in the ER, so they didn't act like she was in a critical position to need to be sent by helicopter. So we don't know what the heck happened there. She's older on, is it Medicare? Is the one for older? So my guess is they just want to, well, anyway, part of the reason there I think might be a monetary reason, but I digress. Anyway, I haven't been particularly thrilled with how they've been doing with her and how they've been treating her, but anyway, as an aside, here's what I was talking about. So with these roses, I didn't really want to do, like, because it's such a smaller area, I didn't really want to do the thick line of paint and then, try to dilute it. So I just come in where there looks like there'll be shading and just did the more pigmented layer where I just use less water. So, and I liked how this turned out really well. I do this, I had a little more room on the purple flowers, the big fluffy ones. They look fluffy. So I use kind of a combination of the techniques there. I don't know if these are techniques or just Michelle's wacky way of doing things. I mean, that could be a book, y'all. I'd make so much money. Michelle's wacky way of doing things. I like it. It'll be a bestseller. But anyway, so yeah, healthcare system is not doing well right now in the U.S. Just I would suggest not climbing on any roofs anytime soon, or using any knives, like, I'll cut away from you. if you were prone to cutting yourself on accident, maybe stay away from the knives. I'm just saying, if you can avoid having to go to the ER right now, you probably want to. Um, so what am I doing here? Okay, so we're coming in with the leaves. All right, so yeah. Anyway, this kind of turned into a mini coloring chat just because that happened, and that's obviously Scam Scamper's doing the best she's done in probably 2 or 3 weeks. Where she was taking the steroid daily last week, she's on every other day now. We've settled into a routine where she will eat in the morning, and at night I'll syringe feed her throughout the day a little bit of KD just to try to get some kidney diet in her because, the steroid in her kidneys and stuff. And her kidneys are, she's in renal insufficiency, so I'm just trying to help her kidneys out a bit. Though today, she has actually been going back and eating some of her breakfast, which she hadn't been doing. So I gave her a little bit of syringe food this morning, but so far today, I haven't really had to stay on her like I have in the past. So I don't know. Anyway, she's at 7.6 pounds. So she is at the highest weight she's been in probably a month and a half, a month maybe. I can't remember what she weighed when I came at the end of June. But she was down all the way to like 6.7 or 6.8 at one point, and that was less than my smallest cat. And so she doesn't seem completely back to normal. She does seem still a little quieter, a little bit weaker, which, she's normally 8 or 9 pounds, so I mean she's dropped some weight. And so I don't think she's entirely out of the woods, but she seems to be doing, we seem to be, we're spoiling the heck out of her, and she seems to be, living her best life she can live right now. So we're just gonna keep at that and cross her fingers and hope, that this continues to work well for a while. She goes to every other day for steroids this week, so I'll be curious to see what changes, and then the week after that she goes back off of them. So I don't know what's going to happen. We'll just have to see. But yep, let me show you quickly how I do the purple here, and then I will speed the rest of it up, and then we will show off the finished picture. So this one, like I said, I kind of do a combo. I just go over the areas that I think would be a little more shaded. The purple I was laying down was darker than I meant it to be, so then I come back in with some more water and dilute it down. So with watercolor and coloring, like there's two things that I don't normally do that kind of that aren't typical of my coloring that I kind of have to learn when it comes to watercolor. And the first one's just being patient and building layers. I don't typically like to do that. I'm one of those, for one reason, usually if I'm using pencils, after a certain period of time, my wrist and my arm and my back hurt. So like I am more about just a few layers rather than just layers and layers of color. But with watercolor, really, if you just want to use watercolor, it's all about building layers to create, shading and highlights and all that stuff. So and it's not as bad with watercolor because it's not as intensive on my hands and my wrists and stuff. And the second thing is being comfortable with a looser style of color. Like with watercolor, I tend to grab bigger brushes than I probably should be using. So I'm a messy colorist anyway, but watercolor is kind of a messy medium. And so even more so than my typical sloppy coloring, I will get outside the lines a little bit. It won't be as perfect looking as it would be with colored pencil or even marker. And so, but that's one of the things with watercolor is you get that looser painterly look to it. So that's one of the things I love watercolor, but I struggle a lot with because I'm more about like precision and not that loose style of painting. And so this is really a challenge for me, and that might be one of the reasons I enjoy it so much. So you can see how I think the purple flowers here are probably those, and the roses were turned out to be some of my favorite parts of the picture. So all right, so I'm gonna speed it up to some music, and then I'm gonna show you guys the finished picture and let y'all know what I thought about it all. Here we go. Alright, here is the finished picture. It turned out, I'll be honest, a lot better than I thought it would. I'm quite proud of this, actually. Just the sheer fact that it's all watercolor, and I haven't tried that really in anything other than just a simple, a simple miniatures page. So, yeah, my favorite part is, big surprise, the kitty. He turned out fantastic, and I do love the flowers on the top as well. My big puffy purple flowers and the roses. I thought they turned out really nice. I wasn't as thrilled about the purple tablecloth and the plant down there in the bottom left. I got kind of sloppy with it. I don't know. I just got kind of lazy about it, and it doesn't look quite as nice as the rest of the picture. But overall, like I said, I really enjoyed this, and I feel like this gives me another way to approach Teresa Goodridge pictures, and so I'm looking forward to trying this again in the future. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this, and I guess, yeah, we'll see how the week goes. Like I said, hopefully they can figure out what's going on with my mom, and I'm going, so y'all have seen Tuesday's video, and then this is Wednesday's video. I'm probably going to try to go ahead and get at least Friday's video done at the start of the week as well, just so I can have everything kind of scheduled in advance. So, but thanks guys for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.